Steve here from Broken Galaxy. Welcome to this week's episode of Push Start to Listen, where we're going to take a look back at the week in gaming. We've got a lot to get through this week, including rumors of a new Switch model, the Sinking City drama, as well as it looks like E3's not happening again this year. Let's get into it. Could we have a new Switch on the horizon? Reports coming out from Bloomberg say that Nintendo has been buying 7-inch 720p rigid OLED screens from Samsung in mass. This would make for a larger screen size for the Switch, as the regular Switch right now has a 6.2-inch screen. The Switch Lite has a 5.5-inch screen. Part of the report also mentions 4K output when docked, which would be a huge step up from what we have. I think that there's going to be a little bit more than just, a little bit more power under the hood and having that nicer display output from what the fans would want. I think the biggest issue right now is the Joy-Con drift. People are going to want a new Joy-Con at the very least, internally. Externally, maybe they switch it up and make it look a little bit different. I can't see them doing that, though. Nintendo has been pretty, I don't want to say staunch, but I mean, they're pretty rigid in, they want that compatibility among all things. Every game that works on the Switch has to also be able to work on the Switch Lite, with the Lite not being able to connect to a TV, and the Joy-Cons don't detach. I don't see anything changing there. But a more powerful Switch doesn't sound like that bad of an idea. If it's coming out this year, I have to imagine it's going to be around Christmas time. You want to hit that Black Friday rush. Everybody's trying to get their shopping done. People are trying to figure out what system they're going to get, especially if the Xboxes and the PS5s are going to be a little bit more plentiful at the end of this year. Nintendo wants something to compete with that, and I think a new Switch is going to be right up their alley for what they need to do. They always have great first-party game support. Third-party support, I think, on the Switch has been a lot better than it was on the Wii U by a landslide. That's where they compete. You give people a little bit more powerful Switch, some good first-party titles, especially with those Pokemon remasters coming this year. They're going to find themselves in a pretty good spot come holiday season. Guess we just have to stay tuned. Nintendo, for well over a year, has not wanted to confirm or deny the existence of a more powerful Switch. I think anybody could probably deduce that they were working on one. It would make sense for them to work on one. That's kind of the strategy these days, right? You had the PS4, then the PS4 Pro, you had the Xbox One, then the Xbox One X. It kind of makes sense for Nintendo to do a half step, while maybe in the background their R&D team is churning out what the next console is going to be. Is it going to be an iteration on the Switch, or is it going to be something completely and totally different? Guess we're just going to have to wait to find out. Kind of the big story this week, besides the Switch news, was the entire mess going on with the Sinking City, Nacon, and Frogwares. I kind of wanted to make this into bullet points to better follow along. If you're interested in getting a deeper dive, plenty of news outlets have gone into depth on the story, but it's so wild and so crazy. I wanted to talk about it. I just don't have the time to really dig in long form like others have, because frankly, they've done way more research than I would have time to do. So let's kind of begin with these bullet points. In August of last year, Frogwares pulled the game from digital stores, claiming that Nacon hadn't paid royalties due totaling about $1.2 million. Nacon was the publishing partner for the game. Nacon earlier this year announced that they would be re-releasing games on digital storefronts. The version of the game that appeared was, as Frogwares described in a lengthy and very detailed blog post, a cracked, hacked, and pirated version of the game. Frogwares issues a DMCA takedown to Valve and gets the game removed from Steam. Here's a quote from Frogwares about that DMCA takedown as published by Patrick Klepek. He's done some fantastic work. Check him out over at Vice if you're interested in this or anything else he's worked on. Regarding our use of a DMCA takedown to remove the game from Steam, we believe in a very short time we were able to collect extremely strong evidence to indicate this version of the game was pirated and contains content that Nacon has absolutely no rights to, namely the Merciful Madness DLC. A DMCA notice proved to be our most effective tool to give us the time to gather further potential evidence and to also start the required and lengthy additional legal processes to prevent this from happening again. Nacon has since claimed that they are well within their contractual rights to do so, and Frogwares has that detailed breakdown, including how they hacked the game, how they pirated the game, the changes that they made to the game, none of which were actually gameplay related, but more so to do with branding and content on the main menu, that if you had clicked on it in the original version of the game, pointed you to other Frogwares products. This is an insane story. And for a kind of brief news show like this, we don't have the time to really dig into it. I highly suggest, if you want to just hear about some of the wild stuff that can happen in the world of video games, go check out that very, very detailed blog post from Frogwares. It's crazy, man. It's really weird. This one was definitely a curveball this week for sure. Artifact is dead, as indicated by a blog post from Valve put up on Steam. Here's a quote. It's now been about a year and a half since the current Artifact team began work on a reboot in earnest. While we're reasonably satisfied we accomplished most of our game side goals, we haven't managed to get the active player numbers to a level that justifies further development at this time. As such, we made the tough decision to stop development on the Artifact 2.0 beta. So the game is becoming free to play. You will be able to play the unfinished beta version of the game, as well as the released, I guess it would be 1.0 version of the game. The game was released in 2018. It was revealed to a now legendary meme-worthy crowd at the International in 2017. It never gained a foothold against other digital card games like Hearthstone and Magic Online, and obviously Magic has a much more robust online component these days. At the time that Artifact came out, I was working at a place where I was surrounded by die-hard card gamers. Both Magic and Hearthstone were huge. We also had a huge contingent of Pokemon players. There's some Yu-Gi-Oh players as well, and a few other games that popped up here and there. I never heard word one from any of those people about Artifact. I don't even know if it was ever mentioned in passing, which is crazy because it was being developed with the creator of Magic the Gathering. You would think that there would be some type of, I don't know, potential interest just because of that. But man, that game just kind of shot itself in the foot from the moment that it was announced because, it was Valve announcing a new game and they don't do that very often. And boy, it was just not what people wanted. It wasn't what Valve fans wanted. It wasn't what card gamers wanted, both for physical card games and digital card games. And it just, I think they really tried. I think they really thought that they had something special there. And, it is a shame to see all of that hard work kind of go into this game just a few years after being released, just completely sunsetted. But that kind of is what happens these days. It's tough to break into a market that's got, 1 to 3 just dominant games. It's a brutal time out there if you're trying to do that. Hopefully, the game lives on with those hardcore fans, and you never know. Somebody could take that concept because it did have like this tower defense aspect to it. Maybe somebody takes it and runs with it, and we see something new and something that does kind of catch everybody's attention in the future. In a quick bit of PC news this week, AMD announced their new card, the Radeon RX 6700. For both price at $479 and performance, it's placed within NVIDIA's offerings of the 3060 Ti and the 3070. AMD is very much pushing this as the optimal card for 1440p gaming. Whether that's true, that remains to be seen. Of course, they release their own benchmarks, but anytime you see manufacturer benchmarks, you have to take that with the biggest grain of salt that you can possibly find. Please wait for actual third-party benchmarks from a reputable source like Gamers Nexus. They'll give you the truth on what that card can actually do. I do give AMD credit. They typically do post benchmarks showing their card being both better than the competition, but also worse than the competition for certain games. They chose an interesting selection of games for their benchmarks, including Cyberpunk 2077, which I think everybody knows is very poorly optimized for the PC. I myself with a 3080 would have a hard time running the game on max settings like AMD said that they did at 1440p. Obviously with no ray tracing, that game is only ray tracing on NVIDIA cards. But I mean, that game in general very powerful cards, cards more powerful than the 6700, have a hard time running that game at max settings at 1440p. Um, yeah, it's a terrible time to buy a computer right now because it's very hard to find processors and graphics cards. But at the same time, it's kind of a wonderful time to put together a computer because you can wait, right? You can really, really wait. You've seen what NVIDIA has come out with. They still have cards to come. You've seen what AMD has come out with. I'm sure they still have cards to come, including this one, which is coming out on March 18th. This is a fantastic time to do your research and to be able to make probably a more educated decision than you've ever been able to make on brand new products, simply by the chance or by the fact that you can't get them right now. When you finally can get them, you'll be more informed than you possibly could have imagined on graphics cards, and I'm sure you'll make the best choice for you. This card is going to sell out like you wouldn't believe. It'll be gone within 5 seconds on every major retailer. But man, if you want to try and get one, make sure you got your credit card information ready to go, and hopefully you beat the bots. Good luck, I guess. Every once in a while, you see a preview for an upcoming game whose visuals just make you stop and pay attention. I think the last one for me was Black Myth Wukong, that trailer that came out of nowhere, being developed by a small team in China. What they're able to do with animation and just the fluidity of everything, it looks absolutely incredible. The game that's kind of taking more than a few people's attention this week is Fantasian. This is being developed by Mistwalker, which is headed up by Hironobu Sakaguchi. The name sounds familiar because he's the creator of Final Fantasy. He was the director of Final Fantasy 1 through 5, and I believe he stayed with the franchise for up until 12, I believe, as a producer. The game has kind of like a dollhouse style look. Hopefully in the trailer you're looking at next to my face, you can kind of get an idea. Screenshots, oddly enough, I think give you a better idea of what it looks like. The trailers and the footage that they released so far haven't been as stunning, I would say, as the still images. Now the visuals are obviously like the main draw here. It's bringing everybody in. It looks absolutely incredible. It looks different. It looks fresh. And that's something that not just JRPGs need, but games in general need right now, are just these games that look very different than anything we've seen before. The thing that I kind of want to talk about is kind of something else besides the visuals that's a little bit different with this game. So they have this system in the game, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this right because it's a mashup of two different words, is the Dimension system. Basically, what it allows you to do is skip the random encounters that you would find in a traditional RPG dungeon. This allows you to then bank them to a side area of the game that you can access at a later time to kind of bang them out all right in a row. It allows you to explore the dungeon without having the random encounters hampering your progress through and exploration of, I guess. It's kind of odd for an developer, and especially a JRPG developer at that, to admit that we know that players don't really like grinding, they don't really like random encounters, so instead we're moving to the separate area of the game where you can just do it all at once, kind of like the household chore you don't like to do. I think, though, that if this is a big enough issue to require development hours being spent to figure out how to best mitigate it, why not spend that time to try and come up with an alternative to it? I guess the counter to that would be, are random encounters and grinding such an iconic part of JRPGs that players expect it to be there, even if it can be relegated to the worst parts of those games? Kind of something to think about, right? So our final topic tonight is the cancellation yet again of a physical E3. Obviously, we have a pandemic going on right now, and having a mass amount of people inside of a convention center is not the greatest idea. It was either this week or last week that Comic-Con was canceled. They're going to go to a digital event. And I imagine that we're going to see some type of digital event for video games as well this year. I believe IGN did something in conjunction with Jeff Keighley last year. I listened to a fair amount of video game, I guess you can call them journalists, pundits, critics, whatever you want to call them. And in terms of E3, there's always kind of been a common thread, and that's that E3 has perhaps outgrown its usefulness to the industry. There's a lot of reasons why that is. It costs money to be at E3. It costs money for websites to send people to cover the games at E3. That's why we've seen some major publishers and developers drop out of E3. Sony hasn't participated. Microsoft hasn't participated. EA hasn't participated. And I think that we're looking at a future where having these Sony State of Plays, Nintendo Directs, whatever Xbox calls it, I think it's the showcase maybe, that those become the norm and we see maybe a few pop up throughout the year. On the other hand, I don't like it. I'll just be honest, I don't like it. I think there's something special, and it doesn't have to be E3, but there is something special about having a few days, and don't make it a couple weeks full of live streams that you have no time to check out all of. Websites that are streaming all day long with trailers and developer interviews and all that stuff. What I'm talking about are those press conferences, press briefings as they like to call them, and condense them into 1 to 3 days. Get all the major companies in there. There's something special about that. It brings together video game players of all different sorts. It doesn't matter if you're into RPGs, first-person shooters, sports games, whatever it may be, there's something there for you. It allows the fan base to get excited, right? Music has the Grammys, and you can complain all you want about the Grammys, but it's still a night to celebrate music. Oscars, again, complain all you want about the Oscars, it's a night to celebrate movies. Video games don't get that A-list, big-budget network television thing, right? It doesn't need it, honestly, because it takes advantage of social media, it takes advantage of internet in ways that other forms of media just haven't kind of adopted because they don't need to. They have those huge advertising dollars coming in for commercials to be on at the Grammys, the Golden Globes, the Oscars, what have you. But having that moment of the year where this is going to be where we find out all the cool new stuff. Maybe this is the year we find out about a new system. This is the year that a long-running franchise that hasn't had a game in a while finally makes a comeback, right? There's something cool about that. It gives you something to be excited about. It gives you something to talk about with other people that are into games. And you just don't get that with these spread out kind of micro doses of video game debuts throughout the year, right? How many times have we seen articles that said yesterday's Nintendo Direct was disappointing? Yesterday's State of Play was disappointing. You see those as long as the day is, for days afterwards. I think that if you can find a way to get everybody involved and get them together to do these kind of big on-stage things that are filmed, you don't have to have a crowd. A crowd obviously sometimes can add to it. Just look at professional wrestling without crowds. You realize how important it is to have people there. You get them together to do this. Yes, it probably doesn't make money or make sense from a money perspective. Yes, it's a lot of time and energy and effort when we could just accomplish this goal by tossing a trailer up on YouTube and filming something from the comfort of our own home. But you lose that aura around what makes video games special, right? What has made video games special in the past? The announcements, the rumors, all of that stuff. You buy into it. Whether you want to or not, you 100% buy into it, and it's something to look forward to. It's something to be excited about, and I'd hate to see that go away. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully we find a way to get everybody together to do something cool, and the answer is not. It is 100% not day-long live streams. It's not 2-week-long events where you have to try and find a way to find time to watch this 10-hour video that's a recap, a rebroadcast of the live stream, or trying to find time of your day to find that one part of the live stream that's talking about the game that you're interested in. That's not the answer. That doesn't work. The video game awards thing at the end of the year, that's cool, man, because think about it. If that's in December, 6 to 7 months later, you've got July, the summer, where E3 typically is. Have it be like that. Every 6 months, we get a major everybody comes together event. I think that's what we need in video games. It may not be fun for the journalists anymore. It may not be fun for some of the companies involved. But you know what? It's fun for the fans, and the fans are the ones that are buying the games. That wraps it up for this week. I want to thank you for watching. You can check us out over on Twitch at Broken Galaxy, BRKNGLXY. It's right underneath my face in this video. You can check me out at Twitter if you want. My Twitter handle's right there. I don't tweet much, and to be honest, most of it's probably going to be about pro wrestling or something unrelated to video games, but it's there if you want to hang out and talk. Thanks for watching, and we'll be right back here next week.